Unexplained Linguistic Phenomena, Cases of People Suddenly Speaking Unknown Languages. The Woman Who Spoke, Ancient Egyptian. Dorothy Eady was a British woman, born in 1904, who, as a young girl, suffered a near-fatal fall down a flight of stairs. Her parents feared for her life, but to their amazement, she survived with seemingly no lasting injuries. However, they quickly noticed a dramatic change in her behavior. Dorothy began speaking in a language that no one around her understood, uttering strange sounds and phrases that confounded her family. As she grew older, Dorothy exhibited an unusual fascination with ancient Egypt. When she was taken to the British Museum at the age of 4, she ran through the halls and clung to the artifacts, claiming that she had come home. She identified hieroglyphs without any prior study and even corrected a museum guide on his translations. Her case baffled scholars, and some began to believe she might be the reincarnation of a past Egyptian priestess. Dorothy later moved to Egypt and took the name Seti. Her vast knowledge of the ancient world, including secret chambers in temples that had not yet been discovered, made her a legend in the world of Egyptology. Was Dorothy Eady's sudden ability to speak an ancient language a case of reincarnation, or could there be another explanation? Neurologists have suggested the possibility of cryptomnesia, where a forgotten memory resurfaces. However, Dorothy's case remains one of the most well-documented linguistic mysteries in history. The Italian man who woke up speaking Mandarin. In 2014, a middle-aged Italian man named Roberto began experiencing severe headaches that culminated in a stroke. He was rushed to the hospital, where he remained in a coma for 2 weeks. When he finally awoke, doctors and family members were stunned. Roberto had completely lost his ability to speak Italian, but could now communicate fluently in Mandarin Chinese. His wife, Francesca, was at a loss. Roberto had never studied Mandarin, she said in an interview. He barely even spoke English, but now he refuses to speak in anything else. When linguists and neuroscientists examined him, they found that his fluency was not just surface level. He could write and read in Mandarin with ease. His accent was impeccable, and he even demonstrated knowledge of cultural nuances that he had never been exposed to before. Doctors were left with several possible explanations. Some suggested that Roberto had been exposed to Mandarin at some subconscious level, perhaps through television or music, and that his brain had somehow unlocked this knowledge due to the trauma. Others proposed the idea of genetic memory, where ancestral knowledge is stored within the DNA. However, no one could explain how Roberto had attained such mastery over a language he had never consciously encountered. The teenage boy who spoke a dead Native American language. In Oklahoma, a 16-year-old boy named Jacob started chanting in a language his family did not recognize. At first, his parents thought he was joking, but the intensity of his speech and the rhythm of his words suggested otherwise. A local linguistics professor was called in to analyze the recordings of Jacob's speech. After weeks of research, the professor was astounded. Jacob was speaking in an extinct dialect of the Wichita tribe, a Native American language that had died out over a century ago. The boy had no known Native American ancestry, nor had he ever been exposed to the language. As news of Jacob's case spread, members of the Wichita tribe came to meet him. Elders were moved to tears when they recognized the words he spoke. According to them, Jacob was reciting ceremonial prayers that had not been heard in generations. This case puzzled experts. Some believed Jacob might have been subconsciously influenced by something he had read or heard. Others suggested that his ability was a form of genetic memory or even spiritual possession. To this day, Jacob insists he does not know how or why he speaks the language, only that the words come to him naturally, as if they had always been a part of him. The man who spoke an ancient Sumerian dialect in his sleep. In 2019, a 47-year-old man named Thomas Berger, a history professor from Germany, experienced an episode that left both medical professionals and linguists baffled. One night, his wife woke up to find him speaking in a deep, rhythmic voice. Except the words he was uttering were unlike anything she had ever heard. At first, she assumed he was just talking in his sleep, but when the strange speech continued for over an hour, she decided to record it. The next morning, Thomas had no recollection of the event. His wife played the recording for him, and though he was fluent in several languages, including Latin, Greek, and Arabic, he could not recognize a single word. Intrigued, he sent the audio file to a linguist friend, Dr. Jonas Mueller, who specialized in ancient languages. What happened next sent shockwaves through the academic community. Dr. Mueller identified the speech as a form of Sumerian, one of the earliest known written languages, spoken over 4,000 years ago in Mesopotamia. Even more astonishingly, the dialect Thomas spoke did not match the standard Sumerian found in ancient texts. It contained phonetic variations and grammatical structures that suggested it might be a lost dialect. As researchers dug deeper, they had Thomas hypnotized to see if they could trigger the phenomenon again. Under hypnosis, he once again began speaking fluently in the same ancient tongue. This time he described visions of a massive city with towering ziggurats, bustling marketplaces, and priests conducting rituals in grand temples. He even identified himself as a keeper of knowledge from a time long past. Experts struggled to explain how Thomas could have accessed this language, which had been extinct for millennia. Some theorized it was a case of cryptomnesia, where forgotten knowledge resurfaces in unexpected ways. However, Thomas had never studied Sumerian, nor had he ever been exposed to the reconstructed pronunciations used by scholars. Others suggested a neurological phenomenon triggered by deep subconscious memories. But the most astonishing twist came when Dr. Mueller cross-referenced Thomas's speech with newly discovered Sumerian inscriptions that had not yet been translated. Several words Thomas spoke were later confirmed as legitimate but previously unknown Sumerian terms. Had Thomas somehow tapped into an ancestral memory, a collective unconscious, or even a past life? To this day, his case remains one of the most perplexing linguistic mysteries ever recorded. Zofari, the soldier who woke up. Speaking Aramaic, Sergeant Daniel Carter was deployed in the Middle East when an explosion left him with severe head trauma. He was airlifted to a military hospital where he remained unconscious for several days. Upon waking up, doctors and fellow soldiers were baffled. Daniel was speaking fluently in Aramaic, an ancient Semitic language spoken during the time of Jesus. Daniel had never studied the language, nor did he have any connection to the cultures that spoke it. His case became an object of study among linguists and neurologists, many of whom could not offer a reasonable explanation. Some researchers suggested that the brain injury had triggered a latent linguistic ability, while others entertained the idea of past life memories. The woman who dreamt in an unknown dialect. A woman named Sophia from Argentina began having recurring dreams where she was speaking in a language completely unfamiliar to her. At first, she dismissed them as nonsense, but the dreams became more vivid and detailed. Soon, she found herself waking up and continuing to speak the mysterious language out loud. When she recorded herself and played the audio for experts, they identified the language as an obscure dialect from rural Mongolia. However, Sophia had never traveled to Mongolia, nor had she ever encountered anyone who spoke the language. Linguists attempted to find an explanation, but none could understand how she had acquired such fluency in a dialect that had barely been documented outside of academic circles. Sophia's case raised new questions about the nature of dreams and memory. Could it be possible that our minds have access to information beyond our conscious understanding? Or was there a supernatural explanation behind her sudden linguistic ability? The child who could read a lost script. A 5-year-old girl in India named Anaya stunned researchers when she effortlessly read an ancient script that had been undeciphered for centuries. Her parents had no explanation, as Anaya had never been exposed to historical texts or studied ancient languages. Scholars from around the world gathered to test Anaya's abilities. She not only read the script, but also provided meanings for words that had been lost to history. Her knowledge challenged everything linguists thought they knew about language acquisition. The man who claimed to have a language from a past life. In 2020, a Brazilian man named Felipe began speaking a language no one could identify. He claimed that the language belonged to a civilization that vanished thousands of years ago. Linguistic experts struggled to categorize it, and despite extensive research, no linguistic roots could be traced. Felipe insisted he was simply remembering the language rather than learning it. He described vivid memories of cities and rituals that had no historical record. Was this a case of spontaneous language generation, or could Felipe have truly accessed knowledge from a forgotten past? Each of these cases challenges our understanding of language, memory, and consciousness. Could these experiences be attributed to hidden cognitive abilities, genetic memory, or something beyond our comprehension? The mystery remains unsolved,